he showed me a photo of his daughter who looked just like me at that age and said, "She's so beautiful, just like you."
My name is Freya Holm. I'm 30 now, and I was in that world for about 3 years, from 25 to 28. Looking back, it's weird how normal everything felt before it all shifted. I had moved to Copenhagen when I was 18, just like I always dreamed. I was done with that little town near Aarhus, done with the quiet house where nobody really talked. My parents' divorce when I was 16 had been ugly, and I just wanted out. So I got myself to the city, found a tiny apartment I could barely afford, and started freelancing as a graphic designer. Most days I'd wake up around 8, make coffee in my little kitchen that looked out over the courtyard, and sit at my desk with my laptop open. I liked the work. There was something satisfying about taking a client's messy idea and turning it into something clean and sharp. I had a few regular gigs, small businesses, some startups, even a couple of local cafes that wanted new logos. Money wasn't steady, but when a good project came in, I'd treat myself. I remember one month I landed a decent contract and bought this really nice wool coat. Soft, expensive. I wore it everywhere that winter like it was armor. I'd meet friends for drinks sometimes, the ones I made in university. We'd sit outside at these little bars, even when it was cold, wrapped in blankets, talking about projects and dating and how expensive rent was. I dated a bit, nothing serious. Guys my age who were also trying to figure life out. It was fun for a while, but I always kept a little distance. I've always been like that. After watching my parents, I figured the only person I could really count on was me. Weekends, I'd go for walks along the canals or ride my bike through the city. Copenhagen is beautiful in that quiet way, especially in the fall when the leaves turn. I'd stop for pastries and people watch. Part of me felt proud that I'd made it this far on my own. No going back to the small town, no ending up stuck like my mom and dad. I was building something, but honestly, it was harder than I let on. The bills added up fast. Some months I'd be eating rice and vegetables for days because a client was late paying. I'd smile and tell my friends I was fine, but inside I was stressed. I wanted nicer things. I wanted to feel like I belonged in this city, not like I was barely hanging on. I started going on dating apps more, not really looking for love, just connection, I guess. Successful guys, guys who seemed to have their shit together. It felt good to talk to people who weren't struggling the same way. I'd scroll through their profiles after a long day, seeing pictures of trips and nice apartments, and something in me would tighten. Not jealousy exactly, but this quiet ache. I had worked so hard to get here, and still it felt like I was always one bad month away from having to move back home. That scared me more than anything. I remember one night I was sitting on my couch with my laptop, finishing a project at 2 a.m., and I just felt so tired. Not just sleepy, tired of always grinding, always proving I was okay. I had this nice apartment, some good clothes, a few creative friends. On paper, it looked like I was doing it. But underneath, I was lonely in a way I didn't really talk about. Things didn't fall apart all at once. It was more like little pieces starting to chip away, one by one, until I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. The freelance work got harder to keep steady. One of my bigger clients changed direction and suddenly didn't need me. Then another project got delayed for weeks, which meant I was waiting on money that never seemed to come when I needed it. Rent in Copenhagen doesn't wait. I started cutting back on everything. No more nice coffees, no new clothes, even groceries got simpler. I remember standing in the kitchen eating plain pasta with salt and thinking, this is temporary, it'll pick up next month. But next month wasn't much better. Then my laptop started acting up. The screen started flickering during a deadline, and I had to spend almost 2,000 kroner. I didn't have to get it fixed. That one hit hard. I paid it on my credit card and told myself I'd make it up soon. I was working longer hours, staring at the screen until my eyes burned, trying to take on whatever gigs I could find. Some nights I'd finish at 11 or 12 and still feel behind. My friends were all moving forward, getting better jobs, talking about moving in with boyfriends, planning trips. I'd listen and smile, but inside I felt stuck, like I was running in place while everyone else was actually getting somewhere. The loneliness crept in more during that time, too. I'd go on dates here and there, but nothing stuck. A lot of the guys seemed just as lost as I was, or they were looking for something casual I wasn't really feeling. I started spending more evenings alone in my apartment. I'd scroll through Instagram, seeing people my age living these polished lives and feel this heavy weight in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, just tired. Tired of pretending I had it together. Then came the winter where everything felt heavier. The days were short and dark. My heating bill was higher than usual, and I had to choose between paying that or putting money aside for taxes. I chose heat, obviously, but it left me even tighter. I skipped a couple of social things because I didn't want to explain why I couldn't split the bill at dinner. I hated that feeling, making excuses, pulling back from people I actually liked. One night, I sat on my couch with my bank app open, looking at the numbers, and I just felt this quiet panic. I was 24, almost 25, and it seemed like no matter how hard I worked, I was always one bad month away from real trouble. The fear of having to move back home kept me up some nights. I could picture it, going back to that small town, everyone knowing I couldn't make it in the city, becoming like my parents in ways I swore I never would. That scared me more than anything. I started pushing myself harder, taking on projects I probably shouldn't have, staying up late, drinking more coffee than I should. I told myself this was just a rough patch. Everyone goes through it. But deep down, I could feel the cracks spreading. The independence I'd fought so hard for was starting to feel fragile, like it could slip away if I wasn't careful. I didn't know what to do. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not after everything. By the time I turned 25, the cracks had turned into real holes I couldn't ignore anymore. I was behind on 2 bills. My credit card was maxed from that laptop repair and a few other things, and another big client had ghosted me after promising payment. I spent weeks applying for regular design jobs, but everything either wanted more experience than I had or paid way less than I needed to survive in the city. I even thought about moving to a cheaper neighborhood, but the thought of starting over again made me feel sick. I kept telling myself something would turn around. I'd stay up late sending more proposals, refreshing my inbox, calling old contacts. Nothing. The fear of having to pack up and go home kept growing. I could already hear the pity in people's voices if I failed. That pushed me to keep going on the dating apps. Not even for romance anymore, just to talk to someone who wasn't struggling the same way I was. That's how I met him. He was older, successful, polite in his messages. We chatted for a couple weeks. He took me out for a nice dinner one night, and for a few hours I felt like a normal girl who had her life together. Toward the end of the evening, he brought it up casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world, a sugar arrangement, help with rent, expenses in exchange for time together, companionship, and yes, sex. I laughed it off at first, told him I wasn't that kind of girl. I went home that night and felt ashamed for even having the conversation. Me, selling myself? No way. I was a graphic designer. I had pride, I had plans. But the next rent due date came closer, and my bank account was almost empty. I tried everything else. I sold some clothes online. I asked a friend for a small loan, which felt humiliating. I took on 3 small rush projects and barely slept. Still not enough. The numbers didn't lie. I sat on my bed one night staring at the ceiling for hours, thinking about my mom's quiet sadness, my dad's cold distance, and how I swore I'd never end up trapped like that. Going back home felt like giving up on the only thing I had left, my independence. The guy messaged again, gentle, no pressure, said he liked me, respected me, and that this could be good for both of us. I ignored it for days. Then I read it again, and again. The fear of losing my apartment, of failing, of becoming invisible, it got louder than the shame. I told myself I was smart. I was in control. This was just a temporary transaction. I'd use the money to get stable, pay off debts, and get back on my feet. Nobody would ever have to know. It wasn't forever. One evening, after another day of dodging calls from my landlord, I picked up my phone with shaking hands. I typed the message and stared at it for a long time before I hit send. Okay, let's try it. I remember the day so clearly. I spent the whole afternoon trying to act normal, answering a couple of client emails like nothing was different. When evening came, I took a long shower, put on a simple black dress I had, and did my makeup carefully. Nothing too much. I told myself it was just a date. I took the train across town and then walked the last few blocks. It was a nice area, quiet, expensive-looking buildings with big windows. The building had a doorman. I gave the guy's name and he just nodded like he'd seen this before, then let me up. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting. My stomach was in knots the whole ride up. When the doors opened, he was standing there in the hallway outside his apartment. He smiled, gave me a quick hug, and said, "You look great. Come on in." His place was beautiful, big, modern, with huge windows overlooking the city lights. Everything looked expensive, but not showy. He offered me a glass of wine right away. We sat on the couch and talked for a bit about my design work, his job in finance, how crazy the housing market was. The conversation felt forced, like we were both pretending this was normal. There were these long silences where I didn't know where to look. After a while, he suggested we move to the bedroom. He was polite about it, almost businesslike. He explained what he expected, that he wanted things to feel natural, and that he'd make sure I was comfortable. I nodded along, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. The intimate part happened. It wasn't violent or rough, but it felt mechanical to me. I kept my eyes closed a lot and tried to stay in my head. When it was over, he got up, went to the bathroom, then came back and handed me an envelope. "This is for you," he said quietly. "Thank you for tonight." Inside was more cash than I'd make in a good month of freelance work. I folded it and put it in my bag without counting it right there. I got dressed quickly. He called me a taxi and waited with me in the lobby. He kissed me on the cheek and said he'd like to see me again if I was up for it. I just smiled and nodded. The cab ride home felt surreal. The city lights blurred past the window, and I kept touching the envelope in my bag, like I needed to make sure it was real. When I finally got back to my apartment, I locked the door, sat on the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor for a long time. I felt numb. Something had shifted inside me that night, and I knew I couldn't go back to who I was before. Not completely. The first few months after that night, everything felt like a different life. I paid my back rent the very next day. Then I cleared my credit card. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my bank account 10 times a day in a panic. That relief was huge. I bought new clothes, real ones from stores I used to walk past. I got my laptop upgraded and even treated myself to a proper desk chair that didn't make my back hurt. Clients started coming more regularly. Some were nice, some were strange. One guy just wanted company for dinner at this incredible restaurant overlooking the harbor. We ate food I couldn't pronounce and talked about art. He paid me more for that night than I used to make in 2 weeks. Another time, a client took me to London for the weekend. Business class. I'd never flown like that before. The seats were huge. The flight attendant knew my name. I remember looking out the window thinking, holy shit, this is really happening. The money changed small things first. I moved to a better apartment with bigger windows and a balcony. I could afford fresh flowers every week and good groceries instead of whatever was cheapest. I started getting invited to things, private events, gallery openings, dinners where everyone at the table had serious money. I'd sit there in a new dress, smiling, listening to these men talk about their businesses, their divorces, their secrets. One guy casually told me about a deal that would probably get him investigated if anyone knew. He laughed like it was nothing. There were weird requests, too. One client wanted me to just sit with him in his hotel suite and watch old movies while he worked. Another asked me to pretend we were on a first date and act shy the whole evening. I got good at reading what they wanted. Some nights it felt almost fun, like I was playing a character in a movie. I'd come home with gifts, jewelry, designer bags, a watch once. I'd look at my closet and think, I can't believe this is my life now. But it wasn't all easy. There were moments that stuck with me, like the time a client got too drunk and started crying about his wife, or when another one made a comment about my body like I wasn't even in the room. I'd smile through it, take the money, and tell myself it was part of the deal. I started using a little Coke here and there just to take the edge off the nights that felt harder. It made everything smoother, more manageable. Slowly the two worlds blended. I was still taking some design jobs, but less and less. My old friends saw me dressing better, traveling more. I told them I had a few big clients and things were picking up. They believed me. Or maybe they didn't want to ask too many questions. The lines got blurry so fast. What used to feel shocking started feeling normal. Booking a hotel room for work, getting picked up in nice cars, knowing exactly how much my time was worth that night. By the end of that first year, I wasn't living a double life anymore. This had become my life. The money, the access, the way people looked at me differently, it all made it really hard to imagine going back to the old version of me. I knew on some level it wasn't sustainable, but I pushed that thought away. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was winning. The high didn't last. After about a year, the whole thing started wearing on me in ways I didn't expect. It happened so gradually that I barely noticed at first. Bookings got more frequent. I'd have 3 or 4 nights a week taken up, sometimes more. I learned to read a man's mood in the first 2 minutes, whether he wanted to talk, show off, or just get straight to it. Some were genuinely nice. One older Danish guy always brought me flowers and asked about my design work like he actually cared. We'd eat room service and watch the news before anything else. Others were colder. They wanted the fantasy of the perfect girl who never had a bad day. I got really good at pretending, smiling when I didn't feel like it, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, remembering little details about their lives so they felt special. I started using different names with different clients. Sometimes I was Anna, other times Sophie. I had a whole set of fake stories about where I grew up and what I did during the day. Lying became automatic. I'd delete messages and clear my browser history every single night before bed, like it was brushing my teeth. My old life faded. I missed a friend's birthday dinner because I had a booking in Malmö. I told her I was sick. Another time I skipped Christmas Eve with the little family I had left, saying I had a big deadline. The excuses got easier. My freelance design work almost stopped completely. I told people in the creative scene that I was doing consulting now. They didn't ask many questions, or maybe they suspected something and didn't want to know. The schedule messed with my head. I'd sleep until 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then get ready for the evening. Days and nights blurred together. I'd wake up some afternoons and literally not remember what day of the week it was. I started carrying a lot of cash. Big bills in my bag, always ready. I caught myself checking hotel room exits and making mental notes about side doors without even thinking about it. Some nights were just strange. One client wanted me to sit across from him at dinner and not speak unless he asked me a question. Another time, a guy in his 40s spent the whole evening showing me pictures of his yacht and talking about his ex-wife like I was his therapist. He tipped extra because I listened. There were men who got rough in small ways, grabbing too hard, ignoring when I tensed up. Nothing I couldn't handle, I told myself, but it left bruises on more than my skin. I'd go home, take a long shower, and push it down. The cocaine became a regular thing. Not every day, but enough. It helped me get through the nights when I felt nothing, when I was just going through the motions. It made me feel sharp and detached at the same time. I hated that I needed it, but I needed it. Friendships slipped away. The girls I used to meet for coffee stopped texting as much. I was always busy or traveling for work. One of them asked me straight up if everything was okay, because I looked tired all the time. I brushed it off. I didn't know how to explain my life without blowing everything up. The creative circles I used to belong to felt far away. I was scared that if I left this world, people would find out and my reputation would be ruined. So I stayed. Luxury stopped impressing me. I stayed in beautiful hotels and ate at places that would have blown my mind 2 years earlier, but it all started feeling the same. Just another suite, another expensive bottle of wine, another man telling me how special I was while paying for my time. I noticed I didn't react to things the way I used to. Comments that would have shocked me in the beginning barely registered anymore. I had crossed so many small lines that I stopped keeping track. There were quiet moments that hit harder than the bad nights, like waking up in a luxury hotel alone after the client left early for a flight, staring at the ceiling and realizing I couldn't remember the last time I felt genuinely happy about something small, or deleting photos from my phone because I couldn't risk anyone seeing them, or counting cash on my kitchen table at 4 a.m., stacking the bills neatly like it made any of this okay. By the 3rd year, I had almost completely accepted it. This was my normal now. The money was good, the lifestyle was comfortable, and I had gotten really good at surviving it. I still told myself I was smart, that I was in control, that I'd stop when I was ready. But deep down, I knew I had become someone I wouldn't have recognized a few years earlier. I was surviving, but I wasn't really living. And somehow, that had become enough. It was supposed to be a normal weekend booking. The client was one I'd seen a few times before, a married guy in finance, always polite, always paid well. He suggested we go to his summer house outside the city for the weekend, said it would be relaxed, just the two of us. I agreed. I needed the money, and getting out of the city sounded nice. We drove out there on a Friday afternoon. The house was beautiful, modern, right by the water with big glass windows. He showed me around, opened a bottle of wine, and we sat on the terrace watching the sunset. For a while, it felt like any other trip. He cooked dinner, we talked about normal stuff, work, travel, the weather. Nothing felt off. Later that evening, we moved inside. The lights were low. He poured more wine and started showing me photos on his phone, family pictures. That's when he pulled up one of his daughter. She was maybe 16 or 17, smiling at the camera on a beach somewhere. He looked at the photo for a long moment and said, "She's so beautiful, just like you were at her age." Then he added, quieter, "I would kill any man who ever did this to her." The words landed hard. I felt this wave of nausea come over me. I smiled and nodded like it was nothing, but my stomach turned. He kept talking, but I wasn't really hearing him anymore. All I could think about was that girl's face and what her father had just said. Here I was, the same age as his daughter, in his weekend house, doing exactly what he said he'd kill someone for. The rest of the night blurred. I went through the motions, but everything felt wrong. When it was over, I told him I was tired and went to the bathroom. I locked the door, sat on the cold tile floor, and for the first time in 3 years, I started crying. Really crying. Quiet at first, then the kind that shakes your whole body. I stayed in there for hours. He knocked once, asked if I was okay. I said I had a headache and just needed to rest. He left me alone. I sat there until the sky started getting light outside the small window. My makeup was ruined, my legs were numb from sitting on the floor. In those hours, everything I'd been pushing down came up. All the clients, all the lies, all the times I told myself I was in control. I was doing to other people's daughters, sisters, and wives what this man said he'd murder someone for doing to his own child. And I had convinced myself it was fine. When I finally came out, he was still asleep. I packed my things quietly, called a taxi, and left before he woke up. The ride back to Copenhagen was silent. The morning sun was coming up over the fields. People were starting their normal days, and I just stared out the window, feeling completely empty. That was the moment I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Not one more night. Something inside me had finally broken for good. After that night at the country house, I tried to quit cold. I blocked the client's number, deleted the apps, and told myself it was over. But it wasn't that simple. 2 weeks later, the money ran low and the panic hit. I almost went back. I actually opened the app one night, scrolled through messages, and sat there shaking before I deleted it again. I tried to leave 3 different times before it stuck. My old university friend Marie was the one who really helped. I finally texted her at 3 a.m. one night and told her everything. She didn't judge me. She just said, "Come stay with me for a while." I moved in with her for 2 months. Changing my number helped, but I was still scared someone from that world would find me. I had nightmares where I was back in hotel rooms and couldn't leave. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing. The guilt was crushing. I kept thinking about all the times I chose the money over everything else. Finances were a mess. I sold most of the expensive things I'd bought and went back to freelance design, taking any small job I could get. It was humiliating at first, going from fancy dinners to scraping by on cheap meals again. I had panic attacks in grocery stores when I saw the total. Therapy started slowly. At first, I barely spoke. Then it all came out in pieces. My mom's depression, my parents' divorce, the cold house I grew up in, and how I ran straight into something even colder, thinking it would fix me. I relapsed once, just one night, almost a year after I left. The shame after was worse than anything. That's when I really committed. I found a small design studio that hired me full time. The pay was modest, but it was steady. I moved to a quieter part of Copenhagen. Nothing fancy. I stopped drinking and using anything. Some days I still feel the pull, the memory of easy money and feeling wanted. But I remind myself what it actually cost. My relationships with men are careful now. I'm 30, and I still get nervous if someone moves too fast. I'm learning to trust, but it's slow. Old friends came back into my life, some of them. Others drifted away for good. That's okay. I'm rebuilding, one ordinary day at a time. Today, I work as a graphic designer at a small studio. I like my colleagues. We drink coffee, complain about deadlines, and go home at reasonable hours. I live more modestly, but it feels honest. I still go to therapy. Some wounds have healed. Others, I don't know if they ever will. I still can't forgive myself for how far I went, for choosing living beautifully over my own worth. I lost years of my life and a piece of my self-respect that I'm still trying to get back. If you're listening to this, I want you to know it wasn't some dramatic movie ending. There are still nights I feel empty. There are mornings I look in the mirror and remember who I used to be in those hotel rooms. But I'm here. I got out. I escaped a cold family only to sell myself for the warmth I always lacked. And now I'm learning, day by day, how to find that warmth without destroying myself to get it.